So our topic for today is about fire protection. So the topics are introduction to fire protection, planning for fire protection, classification of fire and construction hazards, influence of materials, fire detection and signaling devices, fire suppression equipments and systems, fire safety design, and fire alarm systems. So this is our topic for the fire protection system. So the introduction to fire protection, it's the study and practice of mitigating the unwanted effects of potentially destructive fires. All fire protection system includes the following: the devices, the wirings, piping, equipment, and controls to detect fire or smoke, to actuate signal, and to suppress the fire or smoke. So objectives of the fire protection, the primary objective is to save lives and property, and the secondary objective is to minimize interruption of service due to a fire. So it means that the primary objective is to save the people that are using the building and to save the building itself, from destruction or from the fire. Another is the secondary objective is to minimize the interruption. So it means that right after the fire, the the building can be used, again, or maybe the other day after the fire. So that is the secondary objective of the fire protection. So the current trends in building design and modern lifestyles contributing to serious fire hazards is the high-rise buildings becomes taller and more densely situated. So that is one problem, no? If the building is very tall and it's near each other, so it will be difficult to take out the fire, in case of this incident. So it means that that is one of the difficulties. Another one is the height of the building. So if it's more than the uh, capacity or of the fire truck to reach, so that will be a big problem for the to take out the fire. So it means that the building should have its own fire suppression system. Should not depend on the fire truck or the firemen. So another one is the architectural design. Larger areas and open areas and less separation walls. Okay? So that is also one problem of the current trend. So because of the large areas, like if you're going to a mall or if you're going to a convention center, when there is very large areas and high capacity of persons inside, and there are less separations of wall, if in case there will be fire, the fire can go to the other side of the room or the other side of the wing of the building because of less fire, fire uh, firewalls, that will separate, each building or each zone. So another one is controlled indoor environment, like construction of fixed glass windows instead of operable windows in order to mechanically control temperature, humidity, air quality, and to minimize the stack effect. So that is also one problem of high-rise buildings or for commercial buildings. They tend to to minimize the openings or the windows, the operable windows, like in shopping malls that was built during the 1970s or 1980s, where the perimeter of the buildings enclosed with firewalls, so or windows, so there is no separation, there is no means to open the windows in case of smoke that is inside the building. Or another one is to increase the use of combustible materials like furnishing, equipments, and decorative finishes made of materials such as plastic, synthetic, and are source of toxic gas and smoke during a fire. So that is also one problem. Actually, if you are inside a building that is engulfed with flames, you cannot see anything because of the smoke, and you can die not because you got burned. You will die first because you will get suffocated because of the smoke, because of the toxic smoke inside the building. Okay, secondary, you will get into flames if they will not rescue you after you are unconscious because of the smoke, but the main reason that you cannot go out is because you will get disoriented because of the smoke. Okay. So classification of fire and construction hazard. Number one is we have to consider the classification of the fire load, the classification of hazard, the use of or occupancy, and the type of construction. So these are the classification of fire and construction hazard. So the fire load is the amount of heat in kilocalories which is liberated per square meter on a floor area of any compartment by a combustion of the content of a building and any combustible part of the building itself. This amount of heat is used as a basis of grading or occupancy. So the fire load is determined by multiplying the weight of all combustible materials by the calorific value and dividing the floor area under consideration. So if we consider this, if you have an area of 80 square meter, the weight of combustible materials is 1,000 kilograms. So you can calculate what are the materials inside the building based on actual weight, no? So you total all the actual weight and you refer to a calorific value table. Okay, so you can get that calorific value table on the internet. You can download that. Then you can compare or you can summarize what is the equivalent of 1,000 kilogram into calorific value, which is 4,000 kcal per kilogram. So now if you will multiply fire load of 1,200 and times the calorific value divided by the number of square meters, you have 60,000 calorific value per square meter. That is the actual fire load of your building, of the room. No? So another one is the classification of hazards. We have the light hazard, ordinary, or the extra high hazard. The light hazard contains where a total amount of Class A combustible materials is minor or less than 275,000 calorific per square meter. Another one is ordinary or moderate, which is about less than 550,000 calorific value. If you have okay, so if you have a high hazard location with large quantities of highly combustible materials and conditions such as fire could develop quickly with high rate release than more than 1.1 million calorific value per square meter. So this classification of hazards, no, you can base it on the calorific value per square meter. So the classification of fires according to NFPA USA, we have Class A, Class B, Class C, and Class D. Class A fires is fires of ordinary combustible materials such as wood, cloth, paper, rubber, and many plastics. So that's Class A. Class B fire is fires in flammable liquids like oil, grease, tar, oil-based paint, lacquer, and flammable gases. Another Class C is fires involves in energized electrical equipment. Extinguishing medium must not be a conductor of electricity. That's Class C. And Class D fires is fires of combustible materials or metals such as magnesium, titanium, zirconium, sodium, lithium, and potassium. So these are the different classification of fires according to composition of materials or according to the property of the material. So another one, we have classification of fires according to hazards. We have classification of fires according to materials. No? Another one is classification based on use or occupancy. So we have Group A, Group B, Group E, Group F, Group H, Group I, Group M, Group R, Group S, and Group U. So Group A is assemblies occupied by more than 1,000 people or less than 1,000 people in other situation. And Group B is for business. Group E is for educational. Group F is for factory. Group H is for hazard, depending on the hazardous material being handled or stored. Group I is institutional. Group M is mercantile. Group R is residential. Group S is storage. And Group U is utility buildings. And we have based on type of construction. Number one is type 1 is fire resistive structures at that are high rises, and they are the stoutest and of all the construction types were exposed to fire. High rises are usually defined as buildings more than 75 feet tall. So if it's more than 75 feet tall, it's considered a high rise building, no, in terms of fire classification. Okay, that's about 22 meters. No, it's about 22 meters divided by 3. It's about 8 floors. No, it's more than 8, more or less 8 floors. No, so if the building is more or less 8 floors, it's about type 1. Type 2 is considering construction of typical found in new buildings and remodeled of commercial structures. The walls and roof are constructed of non-combustible materials, especially walls, and usually reinforced masonry or tilt slab. Type 3 is ordinary buildings, can be of either new or old construction, and they have non-combustible walls and wood roof. No? So another one is heavy timber construction, that's type 4. Construction is found on older buildings and utilize large dimensional lumber or for structural members and interior elements. And type B is wood frame construction found in many modern homes. The walls and roofs are made of combustible materials, most commonly woods. If the walls are wood frame, the roof is usually as well. So these are the different types of classification of buildings in terms of fire protection based on type of construction. Another one, this is the fire safety requirements for buildings. Okay, let us read all of the 7 fire safety requirements. So we have all buildings more than 1 story shall be provided with liberally designed and safe fireproof exits or escapes. So it is a requirement, no? If your building is more than 1 story, so you should design fire exits and or fire escapes. The exits shall be so placed that they are always immediate, accessible, and each is capable of taking all persons on that floor, as alternative escape routes may be rendered unusable or unsafe due to fire. So it means that you calculate the number of persons that occupies that building or that floor and designate fire exits so that all of the persons inside the building can go down using the fire exits. Escape routes shall be well ventilated, as persons using the escapes are likely to be overcome by smoke and fumes which may enter from the fire. So it means that you need to provide, you need to provide positive air for inside the fire shafts, or the fire escapes, so that smokes will not enter the fire exits. Okay? So fireproof door shall conform rigidly to the fire safety requirements. No, you need to specify fireproof door on the fire exits. Where fire-resisting doors are employed as cut-off or fire breaks, they shall be maintained in good working order so that they may be readily opened to allow quick escapes of persons trapped in and out of the building, and also when necessary, prompt rescue work can be expeditiously carried out. Okay, so you need to maintain the fire exit doors. No? You need to make sure that the locks are operable, that the hinges are in place, that the face of the door is not damaged. So those are the possible or some of the points that you should observe, in inspection of a fire exit door. Electrical and mechanical lifts, while reliable under normal condition, may not always relied for as an escape purpose in event of a fire, as electrical supplies in the building itself may be cut off or otherwise interrupted, or those relying on as mechanical drive may not have the driving power available. So you need the elevators are not it's not a means to exit the building in case of fire, because of the electrical interruptions inside the building. So it is not advisable to use the elevator. So lift shafts and stairways invariably serve as a flues or tunnels, increasing the fire by increasing drought, and their design shall be such as to reduce or to avoid this possibility and consequent fires, spread of fire. So the what you call the stairs is the conduit of smoke, no, to transfer it from one floor to another. It's a main conduit of smoke. So if your stairs are not properly isolated from other areas of the building or the floor, the smoke will pass through a stair or pass through a shaft that will enable the smoke to go on other areas of the building. Even the heat from the fire can pass through the stairs and the elevator shafts. Okay. So, number 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. No. For ceiling, either for sound effects or air conditioning or other similar purposes, shall be so constructed as to prevent either totally or early collapse in the event of fire, so that the person underneath are not fatally trapped before they have the time to reach the exit. This shall apply to cinema theaters and other public buildings or private buildings where there are many people congregates. No? So it means that you need to make sure that your ceilings or your false ceilings are properly designed to have fire-resistant properties or characteristics. No? So this will protect the people underneath the ceiling. So in cases like the cinemas or in cases like large gathering places, the ceiling will be the first part of the building that will fall down in case of fire. Okay, so you need to properly attach the ceiling or make the ceiling lightweight so that it will not damage persons that are below the ceiling in case of fire. Whatever the class or the purpose of the building, the design and construction shall embody the fire retardant for ceiling and roofs. Okay? So you need to make sure that the building, ceiling, and roofs have the characteristics of fire safety or fire retardant characteristic. Floors are required to withstand the effect of fire for a full period stated for particular grading. The design and construction of floors shall be as such standard that shall obviate any replacement, partial or otherwise, because experience shows that a certain types of construction stand up satisfactory against collapse and suffer may first be considered as negligible damage, but in practice later involve complete stripping down and either total or major replacement. The consideration shall also be applied to other elements of the structure where necessary. So in case that you have floors that are highly combustible, these floors should be replaced immediately after the fire, or this floor should be, or other components of the buildings that have caught into fire should be replaced. And proper specification of materials in floors will minimize this effect of replacement. No? In case that you will put floors made of made of a concrete, no, it will minimize the effect of replacement because the concrete, it has a fire rate, it has very high fire rating, no. So it can withstand at least about 7 to 8 hours of fire, no, or maybe 4, no, 4 to 5 hours of fire, no. So that material, you don't need to replace it. In cases that the reinforcement inside the material melts, no, but that is a very rare case, no, that the reinforcement will melt. So roofs for various fire grades shall be designed and constructed to withstand the effect of fire for the maximum period for a particular grading, and this requires concrete or equivalent construction. It is, however, important that a maximum endurance is provided. So it is necessary to also to design the roof properly, no, to withstand the fire in case the building is engulfed in fire. No, so you need to understand that the roof will, if the ceiling will fall down to the person below it, the second material that will fall down is the roof. Okay, if your roof is made of wood, so it will easily be burned into flames in case that the building is caught into fire, and it will fall down. No? So this material, no, should be carefully selected in the material that to be used in the roofing system. So basement, where basement are necessary for a building, where such basement are used for storage, provision shall be made for the escape of any heat arising due to fire and liberating and smoke may be caused. It is essential that fire resistant of the basement shall conform with the highest order and all columns to supporting upper structures shall have grading not less than the laid down in type 1, 2, 3. So because if the this is the reason why your basement should have should have a fire rating, no, of very high fire rating, because it supports the upper part of the building. So if the basement will be caught into fire and your basement is low, no, fire resistant material, so the whole building will collapse, no. And you can avoid this by properly designing the basement material, no, the material that you will use in designing the basement. Okay, another one. So 13, smoke extraction from basements. The following requirements shall be provided for smoke extraction. So unobstructed smoke extracts having direct communication with the open air shall be provided in adjoining or external walls and the position easily accessible for firemen. No? So this is you need to put a smokestack on the basement so that if the basement is caught into fire, the smoke will escape to the smokestack. The area of the smokestacks extract shall be distributed as far as possible around the perimeter of the encouraged flow of smoke and gases where it is impractical to provide a few large extracts for not less than 3 square meters. And a number of small extracts having the same gross area shall be provided. Cover the smokes extracts shall, where practicable, be provided in the stall, board, and pavement, light at the pavement level, and be constructed of light cast iron frames or other construction which may be readily broken by fireman in emergency. That covers shall be suitably marked. Okay. Another one, when they pass through the fire resisting separation, smoke extraction in all cases be completely separated from other compartments in the building by enclosures of appropriate grade or fire resistance. In other cases, steel metal ducts may be provided. Where there are sub-basements, the position of the smoke extracts from sub-basements and basements shall be suitably indicated and distinguished on all external faces of the building. So now we will talk about fire safety design. So there is this what you call relationship between other spaces, no, pertaining to fire safety, no. So if you will consider vertical openings, there will be you can have adequate lighting and coordination with fire department. We can have vertical transportation, coordination with mechanical electrical system, compliance with code requirements for specific use of group, exit enclosure, means of egress, length of travel, smoke controls, and fire-resistant construction. These are all elements that you should consider in designing, no, for fire safety. Okay? You should consider all of these elements so that your building should be safe in cases that it will got into fire. Okay? So smoke control, no, you need to control the smoke. You need to know how far is the fire exit from the last person that is inside the building. What are the means of egress? How can they escape inside the building? What are the exit enclosures? No, what are the material that they use use indoors or fire enclosures? Compliant with codes requirements, no. So this is the local code of your city or municipality or the Philippines. Coordination with mechanical and electrical system. Okay, so you need to protect your electrical and mechanical system. If the building will be caught into fire, you need to make sure that your electrical and mechanical system are protected. Vertical transport. Okay, the elevator, stairs, escalators, fire exits, those are the vertical transports. Coordination with the fire department. How can you communicate with the fire department during fire? Adequate lighting. In case there will be fire, there should be a secondary lighting that will help people inside the building to go out. Okay, so that is why we use a secondary lighting, no, which is a requirement by the building official. And another one is vertical openings. No, you need to make sure that there is a means to escape. No, the smoke should escape using stacks, using vertical openings, and you should have a means of exit, no, vertically. Okay, so in fire-resistant construction, the design should be as such that the components can withstand fire as an integral members of the structure. For the design period, we shall consider the construction of the following components, like the walls and columns, floors and roof, wall openings, escape elements, and strong room construction. So these are the fire-resistant constructions, no? And you should consider that all of these components has fire rating, no? Okay, so the walls and columns, the following points should be observed for making walls and columns to be fire resistant. Use masonry wall, load-bearing walls made of bricks. Use stones or granite or limestones. In case with frames structure, reinforced concrete structure should be preferred to steel. No, in case you need to, in cases that you can replace steel with reinforced concrete, it is advised that you use reinforced concrete. It is if the steel is used for frame structure, the steel structure's component should be properly enclosed or embedded into concrete. No, there are materials that can be used to protect the steel from melting during fire. Partition wall should be fire resistant, and clay construction has better fire resistant. No? And all walls, whether load bearing or non-load bearing, should be plastered with fire resistive mortar. So it's very critical in construction in selecting what is your wall and column, okay, in protecting it from fire. No. Another one is floors and roof. No, floors and roof. The following points are not worthy for fire resistant. For better fire resistant roof, slab roof is preferred. No, for better fire resistant slab roof. For essential to provide sloping roof trusses should be made of RCC or protect rigid steel with fireproof covering. Or for better fire resistant, the floor should be either reinforced concrete or hollow tiled rib floor or concrete jack arc floor or joists embedded on concrete. So as you can see, concrete is the better than any other material in protecting your building from fire. No? So wall opening shall serve means of escape, no? And doors and windows should be made of steel. Fire-resistant door can be obtained by fixing steel plates or both sides of the door. So in commercial buildings or institutional buildings, it is a requirement to use steel doors in fire exits. No? In case of timber, minimum thickness of the door lip should at least be 4 centimeter and the door frame at least 8 to 10 centimeter. So there are also timbers that has characteristic of fire resistance or higher fire rating characteristics. But you need to make sure that you have bought the doors with the certification of fire safety. So all skip doors should be such as provided free circulation to person and passage, lobbies, corridors, stairs, and should be made of fireproofing materials. Escape elements such as staircase, corridors, lobbies, entrance should be constructed of fire-resistant material. No? So the escape should be fireproof, door should be fireproof, staircase should be next to an outer wall. No? So it's very advisable to put a fire exit near to an outer wall. No? And fireproof doors to emergency staircase should be fixed in such a way as to make them close from inside only. Lift shafts connecting various floors should be surrounded with exclosure walls or of fire-resisting material. So there is also a way, no, to enclose, no, enclose the building, no, or enclose the fire, the elevators, no, and protect the shaft from smoke. No, there is also a way to do it. Another one, lift shaft should be vented from the top to permit escape of smoke and hot gases. No, so there should be a what you call an escape, no, for smoke on the lift shaft. Emergency ladder should be provided in fire-resisting buildings, and all escape routes over the roof should be protected with parapet not less than 1 meter high. So planning for fire protection, we have what you call detection, signaling, and suppression. So presence of fire is detected manually or automatically. That is one. No, you need to detect. No, if there is a fire, you need to make a fire alarm or smoke alarm or heat alarm. Okay. So another one is the signaling. No, if there is a fire, you should have a way to signal if there is a fire. No, the alarm will detect the smoke or the heat, and that it should create a signal, no, sending the signal to the person that is responsible, no, to take out the fire, which is the fire department, or signal the security or the engineering office in case there is fire. Another one is the suppression, manual or automatic fire suppression equipment. Systems are used to extinguish fire. No, so we need to make sure that you have a signaling, you have a suppression system, okay, for fire suppression system. Okay, so we have this detection. In case of detection, we have the smoke detectors, the flame detector, or the thermal detectors. No, so smoke detectors, we have the photoelectric type and the ionization type. In thermal detector, we have the fixed temperature type, the rate of rise ROR type, or the combination of the fixed and the rate of rise type. No, so these are the different type of materials or equipment that you can use for flame or smoke or thermal for detection of possible fire. So we have this what you call thermal detector. No? So thermal detector, fixed rate of rise, and the combination. So the fixed type, the sensor consists of normally open contact held by diametric set elements which close and contacts when the ambient temperature reaches a fixed setting. The setting is generally designed for operation of 57 degrees centigrade or 94 degrees centigrade. So that is very hot. No? 57 is very hot. No? 38, no, is hot. So if you have a what you call fever, that's 38. So if it's about 57, it's almost flame. No, it's the rays of rise type. The sensor reacts of which the temperature rises. It contains a sealed but slightly vented air chamber which expands quickly when the temperature near the device rises quickly. When the air chamber expands faster, it can be vented electrically. Contacts attached to the chamber may begin to close and initiate an alarm. Now we have the combination of the two. Okay, we have the combination of fixed and the rate of rise type. Okay, so we have the bimetallic elements. No, this is used to convert temperature changes into mechanical displacement. This strip consists of two strips of elements. Metal will expand at a different rate as they are heated, usually steel or copper, or some cases brass. No, so these are the triggers that will alarm in case there will be fire. No, these are the triggers that will be cut off. No, it will be melted and there will be an alarm. It will signal for an alarm. We have the smoke detector, we have the photoelectric and the ionization vapor. So the photoelectric is this type of principle is if the scattered of light, photoelectric detectors detect the presence of visible particles larger than 3 microns in the air. Inside the detector, there is a light emitting diode or the LED that detects a narrow beam of infrared light across the detection chamber. When the smoke or particles enter the chamber, the infrared light is scattered like this one. No, so the infrared light is break. No, if it breaks because of the smoke, it will create a alarm. Okay, so the light emitting diode will be broken and that will be reflected to the alarm system, the photocell alarm system. So that is the photoelectric smoke detector. Another one is the ionization type. This operates on the principle of charging conductivity of air within the detector chamber. The ionization detector uses a small amount of radioactive material to make the air while sensing a chamber conducting electricity. when the smoke particles of combustion chamber excess enters the combustion gases enters the sensing chamber, they interfere with the conduction of electricity, reducing the current and triggering an alarm. It is also similar to the LED or LED reflection to the alarm, but this time you are using what you call a ionization. No, there is a what you call ionization detector. If the ionization detector is disturbed by the smoke, it will automatically trigger the alarm. So if the smoke particles is in the middle of the two ionization chamber, the positive and the negative polars, so it will create an alarm. Okay, so we have now the flame detectors. Flame detectors are used to detect the direct radiation of flames in the visible infrared and ultraviolet ranges of the spectrum. So this is a UV, no, UV light, UV detector. No, this is a we have the ultraviolet detector, the infrared detector, the photoelectric detector, and the flame flicker detector. So these are all detects visually the flame. No? So now we will talk about the signaling. No? Signaling is the means that you signal, no, the source, no, of fire. No? Where is it located in the building? No, so it will send a signal on what room is being inflamed, and it will the signal will either be transmitted to the Bureau of Fire, or it will be transmitted to the local fire protection unit. No, so we have the detectors for the signaling. We have the light flasher. We have the water sprinkler. So it may trigger the water sprinkler if this is the smoke is detected by the smoke detector. It will trigger the fire alarm control panel, and the fire alarm control panel will trigger the fire sprinkler. It will trigger the alarm. It will release the doors. It will flash the light, the red light. So those are the way that they can signal the fire. No, but now there is also what you call the SMS system that it can signal what you call this a text to the fire department, and the fire department will know where the fire, you know, is being should be responded to. Okay, so now we have the manual alarm station. No, this is the manual, no, the bell, the gong, and then you can break the glass and then press it so that there will be a buzzer or a alarm. Okay, so these are the features of fire protection. No, this is the what you call this this is what the fire alarm control panel. So this is it, the fire alarm control panel, and this is the manual fire alarm. No, and this is the horn or the gong that will create sound in case there will be fire. So this is also a detector. No, this is a heat detector. Okay, this is a light. This is also a fire detector. So fire suppression is achieved by cooling the combustible material to below its ignition temperature, or by preventing oxygen from reacting the combustible material. So fire suppression system must be designed by considering the class of fire and the type of building's occupancy. So fire suppression system may be classified in several ways. We have according to the fire suppression medium, we have water, foam, or chemical or gas. According to the device, we have the portable extinguisher, standpipe and hose, or the automatic fire sprinkler. According to method, we have the manual or automatic. So in terms of method for suppression, we have the manual or automatic. So you can take down the fire manually or automatic, or you can you can create an alarm by manual alarm or automatic alarm. There's also what you call a device that can turn off that can put out the fire, which is the portable. No? We have the portable fire device, portable fire extinguisher. We have the standpipe and hose, that is, you can usually see it inside the building where there is hose inside, there is an axe and there is a fire extinguisher inside that standpipe and hose. We have also the automatic fire sprinkler. So this is the fire sprinkler that is being installed inside the building. Now we have different ways to put out a fire. You can use water, you can use gas, you can use chemical, and you can use foam. Okay. So this is a portable fire extinguisher. The portable fire extinguisher are used as the first line of protection. So there is this safety pin. Take out the safety pin, point the nozzle to the fire, and then pull the handle. Check the pressure gauge if there is a remaining material that is inside this tube. No, so material can either be dry chemical, carbon dioxide, or water. So that is the portable fire extinguisher. So know your fire extinguisher based on color code. No, we have, if it's red, if there is a red line, on top of the fire extinguisher, it means that the material inside the fire extinguisher is water. If there is blue, it means that the material inside is dry powder. If there is beige, it means that it's foam. If there is black, it means it's carbon dioxide. If it's yellow, it's wet chemical. So every type of material inside the fire extinguisher has different use. Water can be used for wood, dry powder can be used for wood, foam can be used for wood, carbon dioxide can be used for flammable liquids, but you cannot use it for gaseous fires. No? Water cannot be used for gaseous fires. CO2 cannot be used for gaseous fire. Okay? So this is the limitation of this water, foam, and carbon dioxide. They cannot be used for gaseous fire. It means that you cannot use fire extinguisher that has water or has foam or has carbon dioxide in case that your stove is burning. Okay, because there is what you call gaseous fire. Okay, so wet chemical in dry powder is the universal material that you can use. No, you can use all of this in what you call this wood, flammable liquids, gaseous fires, and light electrical equipment. In wet chemical, you can use it in wood, paper, and cooking oil fires. No? So in houses, it is advisable that you use fire extinguisher that has yellow markings, yellow or blue. Okay. So this is the same as the previous slide, no? So water system, W is for water, is a universal firefighting medium. It is effectively for class A fires, no? So that is the component of the fire extinguisher that has water inside. Okay? Another one is the foam type, is for class B fire, no? It creates a foam blanket that prevents oxygen to be present in the fire. So it will put out the fire because it will eliminate the third material, that is oxygen. Okay. Another one is gaseous fire suppression system. This is another type of fire. No, fire. This is class C fire. This is connected to a manifold, and this manifold will distribute carbon dioxide, or halogenated gas, which is fluorine, chlorine, bromide, or iodine, or atmospheric gas inside a building. So this is commonly used in call centers. This is what they use in data. What you call this? Data rooms, or CCTV rooms, or in places when there is electronics. Okay. Now we have D for dry chemicals. Okay, so dry chemical are used for D-class fires, such as examples of metals as sodium, titanium, magnesium, potassium, uranium, lithium, plutonium, and magnesium and calcium. Okay, so these dry chemicals, it contains biocarbonates, chloride, phosphates, and other proprietary compounds. Okay, so This is a for class D, the dry chemical. And we have the standby and hose pipe. Okay, so this is what you see usually in buildings, no, the standby hose pipe. This is usually inside the cabinet, no, inside the cabinet, and this cabinet contains the hose pipe and the standby pipes, no. And this can be either dry or wet. Okay, if it's wet, it means that this pipe is filled with water. If it's dry, this pipe has no water. And you need to turn on or put the hose in a Siamese twin from the fire truck so that both this pipe will be filled with water. So we have two type of standby pipe system, which is wet type or dry system. So the wet type, as you can see this, no, this is the wet type. A wet standpipe is filled with water and pressured all the time. So it means that the fire suppression system is always filled with water. Now, whenever the system is activated, water will charge into the connecting hose immediately. Wet standpipe can be used by building occupants. So this is usually in buildings that there is water inside the fire suppression system. The dry type, no, the dry type standpipe is not filled with water. There is no water inside that dry type. So what you can do is the fire system can only be used by firefighters, no? And there is this what you call a Siamese twin, where the fire truck will connect the hose to the Siamese twin, and then there will be a water inside the fire suppression system. Okay. Now, we have the automatic sprinkler system. Automatic sprinkler system are generated fire suppression system consisting of water supply and networks of pipes, sprinkler heads, and other components to provide automatic fire suppression in the buildings or areas in the buildings. This system is most effective for suppressing a Class A fire in building containing ordinary combustible material such as wood, paper, and plastics. The design and installation of the system are strictly regulated by insurance companies and in accordance with the fire code. So this fire sprinkler system is in combination with a detector system. Okay, so the detector system will also activate the fire sprinkler system in case that there is only smoke or in case that there is heat inside the building. Okay, so there are several components. We have the open-head sprinkler, the detector, we have the isolation valve, and we have the valve release. Okay, so if this detector triggers the smoke, it will send a signal to the valve release, and this valve release will release the valve that will enable the water to go to the fire overhead sprinklers. Okay, so the sprinklers is a major component in an automatic sprinkler system. This is sprinkler with discharged water in a specific pattern for extinguishing off or controlling fire. We have different components. We have the nozzle, we have the heat detector, and the spray pattern deflector. So what if this fire sprinkler detects heat, this will automatically break, and there will be water going out of this nozzle, and it will be sprayed, no, horizontally by this spray pattern deflector. So water will deflect from this ring-like metal, and it will spray it, no, around this metal. So it will be evenly sprayed around this metal. Okay, so we have the fusible link type of heat detector constructed with eutectic alloy, which melt at specific temperature. We have the frangible bulb type of detector, contains a glass bulb partially filled with liquids that expands with temperature and rated temperature. So this is the frangible bulb type. This is the fusible link. So this fusible link, it has a material that will melt and it will activate the water. This one, there is what you call a bulb which contains a liquid, and when if it expands, it will trigger the nozzle to create water. So this liquid will shatter this bulb, and automatically the water will go out. So we have the different types of classification of fire sprinklers. No, we have the uncolored or black. It is for ordinary. We have white for intermediate. No, which is about 175 to 225 Fahrenheit or 79 to 107 degrees centigrade. We have the blue, which is 250 to 121. We have the extra high, which is red. We have the very extra high, which is green. We have the ultra high, which is orange. And we have the ultra high, which is, this is almost the same. So as you can see, the maximum ceiling temperature is higher. We usually use the ordinary for houses or buildings, or the intermediate. No, in case if you will put a fire sprinkler inside a kitchen, which is all you usually cook always, and there is always heat and smoke inside the kitchen, you will not use a sprinkle head that is colored black or white. You may use a color blue or red, no, for the kitchen, in which the kitchen is always hot inside. It's always hot inside the kitchen. So if you will use a black or white, it will automatically trigger the fire sprinkler system because of the ceiling temperature, which is lower. No? As you can see, the ceiling temperature for uncolored black is about 38 degrees centigrade. No, this is about the temperature of a person that has fever. If it is white, it's about 66 degrees centigrade, which is white. No, this is the intermediate fire sprinkler system. This is what we commonly use, no, intermediate fire sprinkler system. The high, the very high or the extra high, it is usually used in kitchens. And the ultra high is used in extreme temperature areas. No? So types of automatic sprinkler system, we have the wet pipe and the dry pipe. So I've explained previously what is the wet type and the dry type. So as you can see, we have this component. This is the wet type system, okay, and this is the dry type system. It's always the same. No, the fire department will connect water to the Siamese hose, and that there will be water inside the fire sprinkler system. If there will be no fire department that will connect the hose in the Siamese twin, there is no water inside the fire sprinkler system. Okay, so you need to ask, no, if you are buying a condominium or you are buying a new house or buying a commercial building, you will ask the seller what is the type of fire sprinkler system. If you think that if you want dry type or wet type, that will be your choice. But you need to make sure that you are properly advised what type of sprinkler system is being used on that building. Okay, so these are the different components. Now we have we have a tank and a compressor tank for the fire sprinkler system. This is the dry type and this is the wet type. Okay, so the dry type, no, you need you need a dry valve station that this will the fire department will connect the hose, no, to this, the Siamese connected to the dry valve station, and it will trigger the pipe to trigger the fire sprinkler. In this one, there is automatic water inside the fire sprinkler system. So in designing buildings, no, in designing high-rise building, there is what you call the refuge area. So for building more than 24 meters in height, refuge area of 1.5 square meter or an equivalent of 0.3 square meter per person to accommodate occupants of 2 consecutive floors, whichever is higher, shall be provided as under the refuge area, and this shall be on the periphery of the floor or preferably on a cantilever projection and open to air at least on one side protected with the suitable railings. So as you can see, there are what you call the refuge areas in buildings, no? And these refuge areas are the safest area to go to in case of fire. So in some designs, they created the what you call this, the podium area as the refuge area in high-rise building, in what you call the condominiums. They create also the lobby as a refuge area, and the fire exit as a refuge area, okay, in case of fire. So now we have is also what you call the water curtain nozzle. Distributes water in the form of flat extended all the way to the ground for fire compartment segregation. This fire water curtain system is designed to prevent the fire from propagating into adjacent areas in case of fire incident. So that's what was this water curtain system is usually used on buildings like Coliseum, like churches, or like you can use this for convention areas when you can put a water curtain to prevent the fire from going to one open big space to another open big space. Okay, so this is what you call a water curtain.